Kevin Lankinen's a Vancouver Canuck. Can I say I called it? I don't know what I can say about it. I've been talking about it for what, 3 weeks?
You cannot take a victory lap for calling the signing of the only NHL goaltender left on the market.
I did do that recently, didn't I?
Especially with his name being reported by like Dollywall and Trance as well.
But I will, okay, maybe not a victory lap isn't the right word, but I will say that, what did I say 2 days ago? I said the Canucks need Kevin Lankinen, and Kevin Lankinen needs the Canucks. Evidently, Kevin Lankinen ended up needing the Canucks.
Honestly, your better take was looking around the league and being convinced that Lankinen needed the Canucks more than the other way around. I'll give you props for that.
Perfect. That's all I needed to hear. This is Canucks Conversation. My name is Hugo Drilly. That is Harman Dial, and it is brought to you by our friends over at Greta. Greta is a great spot for all games, home and away. We'll be there for Canucks Army viewing parties throughout the season, and details on that are coming very soon. Just minutes from the arena. Come by before and after the game or whatever event you're downtown for with weekly drink specials. Greta Bar YVR is the place to be. 50 West Cordova Street. Let the games begin. Greta is going to be the place you want to see all the saves that Kevin Lankinen is going to make as a Vancouver Canuck. Okay, we were there for day 3 today down at the South Okanagan Event Center, and we were all sitting around waiting for Rick Tocchet, and there was a bit of a delay. Rick Tocchet didn't come out as soon as we thought he might, and then the news breaks that Kevin Lankinen has signed, or agreed to terms, actually, with the Vancouver Canucks. I'll ask you your thoughts, because I feel like the idea that they needed a goaltender was just becoming more evident every day we were watching the goaltenders in camp.
Yeah, it's a good thing his agent Todd Diamond wasn't at training camp. Otherwise, just seeing the way that Canucks goalies were getting lit up, I feel like Lankinen's camp could have gained a little bit more leverage. But no, in all seriousness, it was really apparent. I mean, the biggest factor for me out of camp was just Patera in particular just being so underwhelmed. And again, this isn't to say that he's going to have a rough regular season or that it was a bad signing by any stretch of the imagination. But if you're Patrick Alvin, Jim Rutherford, Rick Tocchet, looking at training camp and having this uncertainty around Demko status and looking at your options beyond Shilov's to be this number 2 in net, I didn't really have any confidence in Patera. I mean, today as well, day 3 of camp, he was consistently getting beat by shots that probably should have stopped. And even the saves that he was making, he looked really uncomfortable with his rebound control. Sort of doing the thing where, you know how goaltenders will sometimes make a save, but they only get a piece of it as opposed to actually being square to it and properly stopping it. There were a lot of those types of sequences. So I think the urgency was only ramping to whether it was a Lankinen or to claim a guy off waivers as we got closer to the start of the regular season. The Canucks needed to do something, and Lankinen is probably better than any goaltender they could have claimed off waivers.
Lankinen's also better than Casey DeSmith. I just want to throw that out there.
Oh, yeah.
And they go get him for cheaper and for way fewer years. It's 1 year, $887,000. Honestly, I was very surprised by this contract. I'm not going to go into it more, but again, it's a game of chicken that it looks like the Canucks won. Dollywall reported that this was the Canucks' original offer and that it was Lankinen that came down and agreed to terms on this one. It's a completely variable contract. Just kind of looking at the depth chart, Harm, because you just brought up Patera. The thing that I was saying to myself when I was thinking about all this was just that when they signed Patera, they signed him as a guy who could potentially become an NHL backup. They weren't signing him to be the NHL backup. At the time, they thought that Demko was going to be healthy. Again, mid-August, they find out that Demko is going to be a little bit longer than they expected. They go out and make the call to Lankinen. That's when the two sides started talking, was mid-August. Again, you've got Marco Terenis as your goaltending coach, a guy that Lankinen has worked with before, worked with him this summer as well. So he comes in and those two are going to be familiar with each other. The two Finnish guys are going to be familiar with each other. But just looking at it with Patera, again, this is a guy that could have become an NHL backup. Still could. It has a lot of raw tools, but like that's his next step, is maybe he can become an NHL backup. He's not an NHL backup just yet, and I think the Canucks knew that. And the thing that I kept thinking to myself, Harm, was you have all the faith in the world in Shilovs, but he has been rocky in regular seasons in the past, and let's say he's fine. You still need a backup. And let's say Shilovs isn't fine. Not an injury, but let's just say he's an 890 save percentage and you want a little bit more. Patera's not going to give you more than that. I don't think at this
Yeah.
juncture. So you get some certainty with Lankinen. And again, people are wondering, like, what does this mean for Shelovs? It means that the guy who's waiver exempt, when Demko's healthy, is going to still go get to play in Abbotsford because now they have a really, really good backup for Thatcher Demko at the NHL level. It's not a knock on Shelovs. Look, I'm not saying anything bad about Shelovs. I never do, never will. But this is a really solid signing for the Canucks. It shores up their goaltending position. Like I said, Kevin Lankinen's a really good goaltender. Our poll question today is about how many starts he'll get as a Canuck. I think, I'll say it right now, what's the date? September 21st. I think Kevin Lankinen starts more games than Archer Shelovs does at the NHL level this year.
Yeah, I mean, he's more established at the NHL level. And if you're looking at it from the perspective of Shelovs, there's no downside in going to Abbotsford, playing a lion's share of games there. And of course, he might also get a decent chunk of NHL games anyway, just because of the uncertainty around Demko. But he hasn't yet mastered the AHL level, right? It's not like he's Dustin Wolf, for example, who unequivocally the best goaltender in the American League, is putting up ridiculous numbers. Shelov had ups and downs. He was streaky in the AHL, so there absolutely is a ton for him to gain in the sense of having the starters workload, dealing with the highs and lows, getting a higher level of consistency, because we know he has the athleticism, we know he has the tools to where he has a really high potential and a really intriguing ceiling, but he's not going to, there's going to be no detrimental impact on his development if he splits time between Vancouver and Abbotsford.
In the end, the Canucks needed Lankinen, and Lankinen needed the Canucks. Again, last week I went over how many scenarios and how many situations are still out there for Lankinen to sign with, and look, he just lost his seat at the table. It's a game of musical chairs, and Lankinen had no seat. And the Canucks needed a goaltender. And now he comes to the Canucks. Rick Tocchet spoke about it today, and he said that Kevin Lankinen said that he likes the way that they play. So from Lankinen's perspective, again, it's a 1-year contract. It's a chance to prove himself. It's in a pretty decent defensive environment, something that the Canucks certainly couldn't offer 2 years ago to a free agent goaltender, but they can offer it to Lankinen. He's going to come in, and I truly think he's going to shock a lot of people. I'm hyping him up quite a bit, so maybe people that listen to this show won't be shocked, but he's a really solid NHL goalie. Like, he's a really good NHL goalie. He's a top 5 backup in the league last year, and the year before that he was even better. Like I said, I think he's going to be the starter over Shelovs, and I think when Demko's healthy, it's going to be Lankinen that stays up. And it's not a knock on Shelovs.
Yeah, and year by year, you just look at his statistics. Entered the league first in the 2021 shortened season, 909 save percentage in 37 games. As Chicago's starter, a Blackhawks team that wasn't very good. The next year struggled a little bit, at least statistically, 891 save percentage in 32 games. But again, that was an awful Blackhawks team. And then the last couple of seasons, he's ranged between a 908 and a 916. Not playing a ton because UC Saros takes on a workhorse starters type of load. And this is where, like, I've seen people debate, is Lankinen a 1B, like a bona fide tandem caliber goaltender, or is he more just a traditional backup? And I think people have different definitions for that word. I think, to me, if you're going to slot him in the backup, in the more traditional backup territory, and that's how you perceive him, then he's absolutely high end. If you're talking about him relative to more 1B type goaltenders who play 30 to 40 games, then he's probably on the lower end of that. But either way, I would say the Canucks are really fortunate that it was a goaltender of his caliber that ended up being left out in this game of musical chairs, because there are goaltenders who are worse that early in free agency got more term and dollars. You brought up Casey DeSmith, but also Scott Wedgwood, another example of that too.
Anything else that you want to say about Lankinen before we move on?
Nope.
Okay, let's get to our poll question, which is brought to you by our friends over at Mr. Lube. I hope you're ready to talk more about Lankinen, because our poll question is about Kevin Lankinen. The question today: how many starts will Kevin Lankinen get with the Canucks this season? 30 plus, 20 to 29, 10 to 19, and under 10. Right now, leading the vote is 20 to 29. Second place, 10 to 19. And then coming in third is under 10. The least popular answer is 30 plus. I think that's fair. I wouldn't say 30 plus, but I'm in the 20 to 29 range. Absolutely.
I'm surprised that 10 to 19 got that many votes. I think he's absolutely going to play a lot more than 10 to 19.
Do you think he'll play more than 30? I think it's possible.
It depends on Demko
Yeah.
status,
Yep.
right? Because that's so difficult to predict when we're talking about an unprecedented injury.
Yeah.
And even when he does come back, how much can he play? Can you trust him to stay durable? That's going to be the massive X factor that swings these results one way or another. But even if Demko is healthy, you're not at this point. You can't ride him for 55 games, 60 games. There's just no chance of that. And realistic, I don't even want to throw out a realistic estimate of Demko's workload, but the point is there are going to be a lot of games, even if Demko is healthy, for the number 2/number 3 goaltender to eat up. And that's where I wouldn't be surprised if Lankinen's in, let's say, the 25 to 30 game type range.
Yep. Absolutely. It's an insurance policy. Someone in the chat said it as well. It's an insurance policy for the Canucks goaltending depth chart. That was our poll question. It was brought to you by Mr. Lube. Mr. Lube and Tires. Change your oil, change your wipers event is on now. Visit MrLube.com to download your coupon for a free pair of Goodyear hybrid wiper blades with any oil change for a limited time at Mr. Lube. Find them at one of their 18 locations in the Lower Mainland. Not much to get to from training camp today. We said that we were expecting to see some special teams today. Rick Tocchet confirmed that wouldn't be happening until Sunday. So tomorrow, the Canucks are going to do a scrimmage, and they're also going to do some special teams before that scrimmage. We were talking about this. We don't think logistically that we're going to be able to do a show tomorrow. So we'll be back on Tuesday. We'll wrap up training camp. We'll wrap up everything. And we'll also preview our first preseason games. That'll be our next show after this one, folks, is Tuesday. And I did want to also remind people to take the survey. It's in the description of YouTube and the podcast. We didn't even plug it, and it's only been out for a couple days. We've already got like 40 responses. So
let's go.
Now we're telling people to do it. People are going to go out and get it done.
Yes, the viewers seem to love the Family Feud, and there's some dedicated listeners who are jumping on without being told to submit survey responses. This one, I can already say, looking at the early returns, can be a little tougher than the last one, but still doable. I think we've found the sweet spot for you guys now as you look to avoid dropping to 500 on the season.
Sounds like we're going to 500 on the season. I'm just going to say it now. My performance has not been very good lately in the Family Feud. My performance has been good than anyone else, though. So let's get to anyone else, which is brought to you by the Vancouver Canadians. The Vancouver Canadians thank Seas fans for another great season at the Nat this summer. If you're looking to guarantee your seat for all the action in 2025, please visit CanadiansBaseball.com or call 604-872-5232. All right, let's get to anyone else. So get your anyone else's in the chat, folks. A lot of new listeners today, so I see a lot of you in there. Start asking us questions. Who do you want to hear about from training camp? I'll tell you who I want to hear about. I want to hear you talk about him, Harm. I noticed him again today. Filip Hronek. He spoke to the media. He got a lot of love from Rick Tocchet, came in shape, all this sorts of stuff. He's here for 7 years. Maybe spoke to the media as a little generous. He's just so short. Like again, we're gonna post it, I'm sure. But like Faber asked him like what fun activity, what was the highlight of his summer? He's like, I didn't have one. It's like, all right, sure, okay, whatever. You don't want to talk. I get it, but it just made me laugh that it was like the team reporter's like, what's the highlight of your summer? No, didn't have one. No, didn't have one.
Honestly, he had good energy and mood at the start of it.
Yeah.
He like walking into the scrum, he had a bit of a smile, and I'm like, okay, first 2 or 3 questions he gave legit thought to. I was answering pretty well relative to Hronek standards, of course.
The Hronek bar curve.
But
or bell curve.
I could just notice with each question that went by, it was like, okay, this is getting long, even though it had only been like a couple minutes. So I think the patience wore a little bit thin there. I'm not gonna rip a guy for not wanting to talk to media. It's his preference. It is what it is.
No, I'm not gonna rip him, but I am gonna laugh at him when the team reporter asks, what was the highlight of your summer? And he goes, I didn't have one. Okay, sure.
Oh, I was expecting honestly, I was half expecting like a laugh and
that'd be nice.
And a quip like not having to talk to you guys. That would have
been fun.
Awesome. Would have gotten laughs. But yeah, apparently Filip Hronek had no fun this
time. All right, let's get to this one. This is from Josh Hassel in the Facebook chat. From what you've seen, could Lekkerimaki realistically remain on the PD DeBrusk line for the regular season? Harm, he's going to get 3 to 4 exhibition games. That was something we noted from Rick Tocchet, was he said Baines, Lekkerimaki, and Ratu are going to get 3 to 4 preseason games. We're going to get a good look at them. And honestly, these lines that we've seen in training camp, this is what we're going to see in the preseason. This is what it looks like we're going to see in the scrimmage tomorrow. We've talked about Lekkerimaki a lot. Answer that question.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth. I think up until today, I wasn't really factoring it in as a legit chance of him sticking in that type of spot. But the more that I watch him play, he's got an opportunity. I think. Is he necessarily the favorite to stick there? Do I expect him to make the team out of camp and be with the main team for full 82 games? I'd say that's a remote possibility. It's not something that I'm banking on, but he's going to get a real crack at it, to where if he impresses in these scrimmages, if he impresses in preseason, yeah, I think he can win out that opportunity. I mean, the more that I watch him play, and Jake DeBrusk, I believe, brought this up too, where yeah, he's got that incredible shot, and we talk about how lethal it is as a weapon, but his IQ and his playmaking off the rush in certain spots is really impressive, and not just off the rush. There was a drill today where Pettersson had the puck, was carrying it in sort of on the right flank, centered it to Lekkerimaki, who was sort of in the inner slot area, had a defender on him, and sort of Lekkerimaki accepted the pass, then made a backhand no-look feed to DeBrusk on the back door, who had a terrific chance. It's that type of just innate sense, awareness, decision-making with the puck that that he seems to really excel and consistently impress at. There was another one-on-one rush where he completely undressed Höglander with his dekes, sweet set of hands, and went 5-hole on I think it was Artur Shilov's. So he's already special in terms of his skill set, his shot, his hands, his playmaking off the rush. It's, can the other parts of his game translate? And this is where early on I was looking at, for example, yesterday I referenced his work in the corners looks a little bit raw. Is he going to be strong enough? Can he create enough offense down low? But considering the Canucks are emphasizing this idea of, we want to be a team that attacks more off the rush, well, does that give Lekkerimaki a shot to a better chance of making it?
It's his best weapon, man. And you noted it too. The little no look, like little touch pass to DeBrusk for a tap in. Those are plays that not everyone can make, ultimately.
Oh yeah.
And I don't want to say everyone can defend, but it's a lot easier to teach someone how to defend than it is to teach them, yeah, you're going to make this little nifty little touch pass. You got to know where everybody is on the ice at all times. Like, it's harder to teach that. So again, when you have your biggest weapon being your rush offense, and the Canucks notably want to improve their rush offense, it certainly doesn't hurt your chances. So again, like, I don't say it's becoming more and more likely. Let's watch some preseason games. But I'm certainly willing to listen to it more than I was at the start of training camp, is what I'll say.
Yeah, I'm more intrigued to give it a look than I was on day one of
camp.
Yeah,
it's less of a Pettersson with Hronek thing, where you're just kind of like, oh, this is nice that they're doing this for him to get this experience. And Pettersson's look good. Like, Pettersson's look pretty solid. He's not going to play with Philip Hronek on night one, I'll tell you that much. I don't know. I just look at it and say the likelihood of Lekkerimaki actually earning a spot just seems to be increasing with each session I've seen.
One thing that I've wondered is whether him and Sprong can both coexist in like the top 12 forward lineup, or whether they're essentially competing for one job as this, you called it Andrei Kuzmenko, but not making $5 million, but basically a one-dimensional guy with a high-end shot who can help on the power play, especially, both of them being righties. Can both of them sort of coexist? That's what I've been wondering. And I think a lot of it also comes down to the status of Dakota Joshua, because Rick Tocchet has hinted that it's not going to be long before Joshua is ready to play. But does that mean he'll be ready for night one of the regular season? I think that has a significant impact, because just when you plug in the other wingers that are kind of locks to be part of the opening night lineup, let's say Joshua's out of the equation, it's a lot easier to have a situation where, let's say, Lekkerimaki is with DeBrusk and Pettersson, and you have a fourth line with, let's say, Sprong, one of Bluger, Suter, and then a Kiefer Sherwood. But the problem is, if Joshua's in the lineup, then you're also, I mean, at this point, you're probably plugging Heinen to play with Miller and Besser. And then Höglander at that point is probably, he's probably on the fourth line in that wing spot where you'd plug in a Daniel Sprong, so it only leaves one lineup spot on that top six right wing to play with Pettersson and DeBrusk for Sprong or Lekaramaki. So I think Joshua in his health could have an impact too, because again, if he's in the mix, then I think it's a lot tougher to have both Lekaramaki and Sprong in the lineup.
Keaton Chef, how long will it take to see both DPD and Willander as full-time NHLers? Willander, again, full-time NHLer. We're probably looking at next season or the season after that to be a full-time NHLer. Like, he might sign at the end of the year and come in after his collegiate season. We might see that, but again, are you a full-time NHLer at that point? No. So it's next season or the season after that. Elias Pettersson, that's the one we got the question about. A guy who has stood out at camp playing next to Filip Hronek.
I wouldn't be surprised if he gets games if the club runs into injuries on the left side, which I would never have said before.
Do you know who I like? You know who I've liked him more than?
Who?
Derek Forbort. I have not liked Derek Forbort.
Well, also
maybe camp isn't. Maybe he's the anti-Phil Giuseppe, where he doesn't look good in camps. But I have not liked what I've seen from Derek Forbort.
Forbort's a PK specialist essentially. Like this isn't the type of training camp is not the environment where a guy like him is going to shine, just because he's not as quick. He doesn't have very good puck skills. Forbort's going to be the team's third pair LD. Like, we know that. It's basically a lock, but I do think it matters when you see, Pettersson get a shot with Hronek. Kudraytsev on day 3, he got a bump to play with Tyler Myers, which is notable because he shined in Young Stars. Tocchet had a lot of praise for him yesterday. I think given how thin the left side defense depth is, like at this point, DPD, Kudraytsev are kind of contending with sort of the Brisebois, Wolanin, Akito Hirose tier, in the sense of like, who's the next man up if there's an injury? And that's a legit question, because Forbort and Soucy on the left side both played fewer than 41 games last season because of how much they struggled to stay healthy. So that's an area where, okay, for Kudraytsev, for DPD, you're not talking about, can I perform well in camp and preseason, make the team right away? It's more, can I make a strong, lasting impression here for the coaching staff and management, to where you get to late November or December, the club runs into one or two back-end injuries, especially if it's on the left side. Where on the pecking order are those guys relative to those other options?
Okay, quick thing for me, not training camp related, but I want to get this in. Dave Hall wrote about it. Canucks prospect Melvin Fernstrom got his first SHL point in his season debut today. I got to say, it's a Saturday, and usually we kind of slow things down on Saturday. We had like 16 articles out on Canucks Army today. It's just crazy.
Wow.
I can't even keep up with how much content we're putting out right now, but hey, it's good stuff. I did a mailbag, and I don't know if you recall, because I think both of us forgot about this, but when we were originally planning our weekend and our week of shows, we were going to make today a mailbag episode. Do you remember this?
Oh yeah.
And we completely forgot. So thank God Kevin Lankinen signed, because we forgot about the mailbag episode. So we would have just been sitting here being like, oh, we don't have much to talk about, and we knew that was coming, which is why we originally thought we should do a mailbag today. So folks, if you have any questions, get them in anyone else. We'll do a little bit of a mailbag here. But thank God Kevin Lankinen signed.
I will also say, to go back to Hronek, because I did notice him a lot, and we were kind of making fun of his media conference. So let's give him some love here. I've been impressed with his leadership and how he's been taking charge through camp so far, right? He's obviously not only on a different pair than Quinn Hughes, but they're in separate groups, and you're noticing that he's really taking this responsibility of playing with Pettersson seriously, just in the sense of how many conversations he's having with Pettersson in between drills to give him tips and instructions. He's very vocal. He looks assertive. He looks a lot more confident and comfortable as a leader, because normally he's pretty shy and quiet and reserved, at least on the ice. He's been noticeably sort of taking charge, and on the ice as well. He looks so dialed in. The physicality and competitiveness in the 2-on-2 battle drills has stood out. He's been playing with edge. He's also drawn some oohs and ahs with, like, on day 3, he had a bullet one-timer in one of the drills that beat one of the goaltenders. On day 2, he made a slick play, taking the puck around the net and setting Höglander up for a cross-seam sort of pass in the slot that led to a goal. He's looked so sharp, and Talk had said that between the level that he's playing at on the ice, but also how vocal he's being as a leader. Talk had sent him a text after the first day of camp to tell him, hey man, really impressed with what you're showing so far.
And Hronik didn't reply. He sent him a thumbs up emoji as a response. You set me up for that one. I'm sorry to hear it. Okay. Yeah. Conversation in the chat is asking how wedding plannings go. It's actually going really well. I've a lot of people have asked me this question this week. How's wedding planning going? It's going really well. Like, we got venue, we got everything picked out, and we're like a year out, or less than a year out, but still, I was surprised how well it went, because I thought it was going to be a lot harder than it has been.
Most people talk about it as a nightmare.
Yeah, it hasn't been my experience. How was wedding planning for you, Jacob?
It was fine. My wife and I did a lot of planning early on, like you're doing, so it made it a little easier. Although you're gonna run into this big stretch of about 3 or 4 months where there's just nothing to do, because you did all the early stuff and you have to sit and wait for the for the last minute stuff. So you're gonna kind of feel like, what am I doing right now? Like, there's just nothing to do, and then it's all gonna hit you like in the last month, and that's gonna be stressful. But other than that, like, last 2 or 3 weeks is a breeze.
Some Convo listeners in the chat are asking where their invitations are. I haven't done invitations yet. Maybe some of you will get the cut there. Okay, let's go. Nar has a Canucks Convo drinking game idea. He said, take a drink every time the boys say physicality. Okay, here we go. Dave Hall, friend of the show. I couldn't agree more, Harm. I saw a lot of this on Thursday and was impressed. DP was a little scattered in recognizing the drills, and Phil was always there to explain it. Yeah, seriously, that is a really good point and a really good thing to see from Philip Hronik. Again, a guy that you're investing in long term, you want him to feel comfortable as a leader. Anyways, I did like
that's also part of the reason why I'm not reading a ton into, for example, Noah Juleson getting a shot early on with Quinn Hughes. Like, to me, the top 6 on defense is set. Right? Like, how is Juleson going to bump Desharnais? The club just committed $2 million to him in free agency. The coaching staff believes highly in him. They didn't just commit all that money in the extra year of term just to then immediately park him in the press box.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm just looking around, like, I'm trying to go through the chat, because we do have a lot. We've got almost 200 people listening right now, and again, I wish there was more to talk about. Just when you look at training camp, is there anything else that just really is standing out to you right now? Like, one thing that I was going to talk about a lot today was how bad the goaltending's been, and just like that it's now, you can't ignore it. It's not usually something we talk about in day 1, day 2, even day 2. We were talking like, yeah, well, there are a lot of rush drills. It's not conducive to making goaltenders look good, but hasn't been a story in the past. We've never talked about it like this.
The flip side of that coin too, though, is, again, they're rush drills, so it's not like an NHL environment where you're going up 5-on-5 play. But I do see a lot of promising signs with this concept that Rick Tocchet has mentioned of wanting to create more off the rush, the way that they're executing, and also seeing the new personnel, the way DeBrusk is fitting in, the speed that he brings, the pace that Heinen brings, the pace that Sherwood brings. Now, Lekaramaki and Sprong, the type of skill set that they have with their high-end shot. You can see, at least with the forwards, that, okay, this is a group that should be able to generate a lot more in transition. And I'm gaining some confidence in that respect. It's something that Drance and I were talking about today, that we're buying that, okay, they went out and acquired the personnel for it. That personnel, we haven't seen them in game action, but at least in a camp environment, they're meshing in well. Plus, they've clearly put an emphasis on this in camp. It's been a major point of emphasis. It's almost like this plan is sort of coming together. And so I'm optimistic about that standpoint. I still have concerns about, well, is their defense mobile enough to be able to contribute in that transition facet? But Tocchet also mentioned that he thinks a lot of it might also just be philosophy, and in saying that in the past, he wonders if players are making reads in those situations where they could, not just defensemen, but also forwards, whether they can aggressively push up, and it's maybe a split second of like, hey, does Talk want me to actually move up here? And that's where I think the players are going to have more of a green light to do that. I'm optimistic about that based off 3 days in camp so far.
Okay, a couple things in the chat here. This one from Bob Bluger, regulars from the show. He said, are the Canucks going to try to score on the rush more this year? Can you guys see changes in the system? Again, I was kind of noticing this, especially through the first 3 days, that like last year, there was a lot more teaching. It was a lot of in-zone defending. It was a lot of, okay, you're going to stand here. When the puck moves here, where do you go? And the team needed that back then.
Yeah.
But in Tocchet's mind, they don't need that anymore. And what they need to do is improve their rush offense. So yeah, like most of the stuff we've been seeing is about creating off the rush. It's about breaking the puck out, moving the puck up north, south efficiently, getting in on the forecheck. It's been all of that through the first 3 days.
Yeah, we mentioned this before as well, but Tocchet also really emphasized how important it is for them to off entries get the puck into the middle as quickly as possible and then look to make plays, as opposed to trying to make plays and make passes when you're outside the dots.
This one from Negative Capable in the YouTube live chat. Where does Höglander fit into the opening night roster? We were talking about this right before. And again, you mentioned it, like the spot that Sprong's competing for. Like, where does Nils Höglander fit in the opening night lineup? Give me the scenario with Dakota Joshua and without Dakota Joshua.
It's really tough to say, because he's a secondary option who could fill in for both the top line with Miller and Besser if Heinen falters, or could also slot onto that Pettersson line based off how Lekkerimaki and potentially Sprong develop in that opportunity. Höglander's spot, I think, almost kind of depends on how the wingers who've gotten the first opportunity fare. Because if those guys crush it, he's just not going to get that initial opportunity to step into the top six. And then you're looking more realistically at like if it's without Joshua in that scenario, then I think he could play with Garland. Those two have looked great together, and maybe that becomes.
They got a secret handshake. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, they got a little handshake going.
And of course, like two small wingers together, that line, whether you slot them with Bluger or Suter, that now all of a sudden becomes more of like a sheltered scoring line, whereas maybe you build out a fourth line that's then beefier, can take on more defensive assignments. But let's say Heinen sticks with Miller and Besser and one of Sprong or Lekkerimaki sticks on the second line, then in a scenario where Joshua's out of lineup, I see Höglander on the third line. If Joshua's back, then I see Höglander on the fourth line. And if either one of Heinen or Sprong / Lekkerimaki falter in their top six opportunities, that's where I think Höglander will get an opportunity to play on one of the top two lines. I don't know if I did the best job of explaining that. It's pretty convoluted, but I tried my best.
Here's one to think about. I want you to think about it for a bit. Where does the Canucks forward depth rank in the NHL? Conversation in the chat said, I'd say top 5. Think about it. You don't have to answer off the cuff. Think about it for a second. Jacob, you're a sushi guy, right?
Yeah, I like sushi.
Okay, so while Harman thinks about that, I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Look at me just sharing it up over here. I'm going to bring you in, Jacob.
Yeah, sounds good.
This one, another great question from Negative Capable. If local sushi restaurants create a Lekkerimaki roll, okay, so he spelled Lekkeri space Maki roll, what would be in it? And I don't know the answer to this.
Well, I can see that Sapporo J responded, Maki literally means roll in Japanese.
Yes.
So it'd be like the Lekkeri roll. I don't know.
The Lekkerimaki.
Yeah, exactly. The Lekkerimaki, and that would mean it's the Lekkeri roll. I don't know. What kind of fish do they have in Sweden? Probably some weird, like pickled. I know in Norway they have pickled herring.
Yeah.
So would you do some kind of like pickled fish roll? That doesn't sound very
Harman's doing important research for the show, looking up forward groups, and I just Googled fish of Sweden. So I see pike, zander, perch, and coarse species. I'm also not a big fish guy. Like I'm really not. I'm not. Love my fiance, but one night she's like, you know what, we're gonna try salmon. No, didn't do it for me. I'm a steak and chicken guy. I'm not a salmon guy.
Salmon is so good.
And she cooked it really good. It was the best salmon I'd ever had.
Yeah.
That's the thing. She's a very, very good cook, I must say. It was like the best salmon I'd ever had. Salmon's just not my thing. Like if I have I'll never order salmon in a restaurant. If I have the option of like chicken or steak, can I tell the story of my smash burger and steak last night?
Yeah, go for it.
So we went to a steakhouse here in Penticton, and I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna order a steak because some media folk had already been there and they said it was great. I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna try the steak. But then I saw smash burger on the menu, and I'm a big smash burger guy. I love smash burgers. So I had to order the smash burger, and then I noticed because the smash burger was on the same part of the menu as salads, so it said add like a piece of steak or a piece of chicken for $9. I was like, $9, and it's a 3-ounce steak. They'll just add it to your salad or whatever. So the waitress came by and I said, I'd like the smash burger. Can you also put just this $9 steak that you have on the side of the menu here? Can you just put that on the plate? And she kind of paused, laughed a little, and then said, yeah, I think I can. It was delicious. It was awesome. And I'm a big splitting food guy. Like I've told the story. When Faber and I went to Eliza, he ordered chicken, I ordered steak, but we split it. So you get to try everything. I don't need an entire steak. I'll eat it, and I like a big steak. I like steak, but I like trying other things. Like I like having a little bit of everything. So I'm a big splitting guy.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think you nailed that decision. I don't care if people laugh at you or think that's weird. Or
I
abnormal.
have zero regrets. As soon as I saw the plate, I had zero regrets. And Jax is asking what a smash burger is. It's when you put it on like a griddle or a Blackstone and you smash it down. It's great.
Okay, so I was looking around. I don't have like I can't definitively rank them, but I would agree that they're top 5. Just looking through the Western Conference, I'd probably rate Edmonton's forward group higher. I still think even though Dallas lost Pavelski just because of Stankoven stepping in, because I expect Wyatt Johnston to take another step. They're also going to get Maverick Bourque. I would
a better year from Robertson.
Yeah, I still think the Stars forward group is deeper. But after that, like just going through the West, I don't like Winnipeg's forward group better than Vancouver's. Colorado, yeah, they've got McKinnon and Rantanen at the top of the lineup. But the problem is with the uncertainty around Nichushkin and Landeskog, they're just not deep. I don't like their bottom 6 very much. So I'd probably take Vancouver's over Colorado's at the moment. Right now, that changes if Nichushkin and Landeskog come back and are healthy and actually stay in the lineup. Elsewhere, like Nashville's, obviously they've upgraded now that they've brought Stamkos and Marchessault, but still, they've got an older group. Like Marchessault's up there in age, Stamkos
Vegas
is up there
lost
in age.
too much to be in this conversation anymore.
Nyquist is 35. Like a lot of their forwards, like they're gonna have a sick power play, but 5-on-5, I still take Vancouver's forward group over them. Vegas arguably has the worst winger depth among playoff contender type teams, given how many names they lost. Don't like LA's. And then you move to the East, look at some of the contenders. The Rangers, I think Zibanejad has taken a step back.
Yeah,
5-on-5.
The Rangers are great because their defense is great and their goaltending is great.
Their defense is all right. I don't like their blue line. It's their special teams are elite, and they've got an amazing goalie, and they have enough stars that they can still perform at a high level. But
I like the Rangers blue line. Do we have to rank
it's
blue lines
above
now?
it's above average, but I don't know. Watching like Trouba is just taking such a big step back.
You know what? Trouba, especially in the playoffs, it was
Lindgren
really
as well. Like they really struggled to move the puck.
Yeah.
But anyway, after that, it's like, I mean, maybe you take Florida's, but they maybe. Carolina, I don't love. No. Like they have Kotkaniemi in their 2C slot.
Look, if we put Edmonton so high because of their high end talent, Carolina is the opposite.
Vancouver's top 5, I think, for their forward group. Now their defense, on the other hand, is much more close to the middle of the pack, and needs to be upgraded if they want to go on a deep playoff run.
And that's the thing. I'll ask you this because I don't think we talked about this on Wednesday. One of the things Jim Rutherford said was he thinks their forward group is as good and probably a little bit better than it was heading into last year, at this time last year. I agree with that. Like, I think they have a better team right now at this juncture than they did a year ago on paper.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you can make those upgrades on defense like they did last year.
Yeah, it'll just come down to how many names are available. What's the competition like?
Rasmus Anderson in November.
What are the prices to make those acquisitions? Those are the unknowns, and it's not necessarily going to be easy, especially when you see certain names. Like I don't think Adam Larsson was the ideal stylistic fit per se, but a guy like that signs an extension. He would have been a top 4 right-handed defender that other teams would have looked at.
Yeah.
And that when a guy like that goes off the market really early on, already there's a bit of a squeeze in terms of the number of top 4 defensemen that are available. But yeah, that's still something you can upgrade mid-season.
All right, let's get to the Vancouver Whitecaps. Vancouver Whitecaps FC are hosting the TELUS Canadian Championship on Wednesday, September 25th with a 7 p.m. kickoff at BC Place. The Caps are looking to three-peat as winners of the Voyageurs Cup and will be taking on Toronto FC, who they beat for the Cup in an epic shootout in 2022. With a win, the Caps can book their spot into the 2025 CONCACAF Champions Cup. free t-shirt is available for the first 10,000 fans and 50% off all beverages until kickoff. So get there early. Also, the Whitecaps are hosting a Toronto FC merch exchange for free tickets at the Caps team store on September 20th and 21st. Caps TFC TELUS Canadian Championship Wednesday, September 25th. The atmosphere at BC Place for Cup Finals is always unmatched. So get your tickets now. Check out whitecapsfc.com. Someone earlier asked, when Quads asks Harman, do you have any final thoughts? Will he ever say, yes, I do, actually?
I feel like 10 to 20% of the time.
Yeah, I feel
I
like
actually
you do
have something
sometimes.
to
So,
chime in with.
That definitely happened earlier this week. In one of the shows, Quad said, oh, any final thoughts? And Harm's like, actually, one more thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
I got an
happens
extra
sometimes.
5 minutes out of it.
So I ask you, any final thoughts?
No.
Good one. Good one. All right, let's get to our Bet365 bet of the day, brought to you by Bet365. You guys were seething last night, I heard, because the Mariners won. The Mariners won, and with it, I'm sure that their World Series odds have just skyrocketed.
I'm sure this time it'll work out.
Any thoughts?
Just keep using that
saying-
slot machine, man.
We're going to the casino tonight too. Did their odds go up? Let's see.
Yeah, but
No way. The
No, they did
World
not
Series
go up.
odds-
They did not
Come
go up.
on, man.
from one game, and they're still, 2.5 or 3 back of a playoff spot?
Believe in something.
I mean, look, we've got a great slate of NFL games tomorrow. We've got preseason hockey, and we're
Yeah.
still going to stick with the Mariners World Series.
Yeah.
Really?
No. That's not the bet today. I'm not just going to pick bad baseball teams every day. It's what a lesser man might say. Tonight, we're taking the Colorado Rockies to take down the LA Dodgers. Right now, you can get that at plus 235 odds. Plus 235. That's crazy. Can we just talk about plus 235 for a regular season MLB game is crazy. Like that's crazy. Okay, plus 235 for the Rockies. Cal Quantrill on the bump. Walker Buehler struggled. Come on, you're with me here.
Ohtani probably is going to outscore the Rockies on his own.
Potentially.
I'm just glad you didn't do another Mariners bet. I think I would have literally gotten up and left before the end of the show if you started talking about your Mariners.
Watch Colorado Rockies to win tonight.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
Do you remember when I
for
did
the
this with
record.
the A's earlier in the season?
Yeah, you did,
I was
and you
early
were
on
right.
the A's. Who, by the way, I just looked. The A's have lost 5 more games than the Jays have.
Yeah, Oakland had a good season
Oakland,
compared to expectations.
their offense was like top 10. They just had no pitching, which is crazy.
And just imagine if they had an owner who actually gave a crap
Yeah.
about putting a competitive product on the field.
And hey, allegedly, and I don't believe a word the guy says, but allegedly they're going to next year, and they've got some building blocks. They got Lawrence Butler. They got a lot of good stuff, but I'm not going to talk about baseball more than that. 235 plus 235 odds. Take the Rockies or don't. It's up to you. Over at Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code VANBONUS when you sign up for an account. Again, never ordinary. Rockies. K-Town Chef, do not listen to Quads. Someone asked, Daniel Sprong. Okay, this one. We'll close on this one. Daniel Sprong, over under 24.5 total goals.
I'll take the under.
I'm also
Just
taking the
historically.
I'd like to take the over. Well, speaking of which, I also have to tell this on the podcast. Actually, I'm not allowed to tell this on the podcast yet. Faber and I may have made another bet, but we'll wait. We might have made another little side bet, a nice little dinner bet, but we'll see. See if I can talk.
Okay, you're gonna have to reveal it at some point.
I
I'm
will.
not saying
I just want to
but-
check with him first because.
Yeah.
Anyways. All right, we'll close it out there. For my co-host Harman Dial and our technical producer Jacob Lazar, my name is Jake Virgelli. Thank you so much for listening to the episode of the Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.